Hello, this is Dr. David Kaiser. I just wanted to give a little pre-lesson here on the Greek alphabet, give you some hints and clues that might make it easier for you to recognize them. There's 24 letters in the Greek alphabet, or 24 characters. There's several things that are important you might want to know about it. It's not that hard to learn it. People think it's hard. Well, I can't read Greek. Well, if you've ever been in a fraternity or sorority, you can probably read Greek in some form. I've divided the alphabet into 6 sections of 4 characters each. And we'll talk about them particularly, especially the ones that might be harder to remember, after I tell you about several other things. First of all, you're not going to need capital letters to study Biblical Greek. The text you'll be using doesn't have many capital letters, and so it's not all that necessary. The small letters, secondly, are very much like the large letters in most cases, but it's the small letters that we'll be concentrating on. Some of the small letters, or actually most of them, resemble an English letter well enough that you can tell what that letter is. Those that don't, I want to sort of point out here. And for the next main point, that is, there are sometimes more than one letter for a particular like sound. For instance, there are 2 E's, 2 O's, and we'll cover that. So that's what we have. Small letters, what they look like, and where there's duplication, and then where there's some letters that don't look anything like English. And you'll find a printed copy of this on your resource material for this course. So here we go into a few of these things. The first 3 letters of the Greek alphabet are alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Now that's very close to A, B, C, D. Actually, it's A, B, G, D. And we'll just discuss them for a minute. The small a is pretty much like an English small a. The small b is pretty much like an English small b. The small d is very much like an English small d. But the third letter, gamma, which is really a G, looks sort of like a Y, or it can look like a written G with the round top cut off. So you have alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Now the word alphabet that we use in English comes from the first 2 letters of the Greek alphabet, alpha and beta. And they combine them and take off the A, and it's called an alphabet. One of the things that many people don't realize, that a lot of languages, not just European languages or Latin type languages or even Greek languages, get their roots from Greek words. You look in the dictionary and it'll say from the Latin or from the Old French. Well, the problem was the Latin and the Old French were from the Greek. My Greek teacher used to tell me that in college, who was a Greek professor who taught Spanish, and he tutored half a dozen of us in Biblical Greek, which is different than modern Greek. So when you're studying Biblical Greek, you're not going to be able to go to Athens and talk to the people in Greek. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and look for the small letters, look pretty much the same. And then just in general, as we move on, the 2 E's are epsilon and eta. The epsilon looks pretty much like an E in English, but the eta looks pretty much like an N with a droopy tail, an N with a droopy tail. And they both are E's. And if the word is spelled with that kind of E, that's how the word is spelled. You just can't swap around the epsilon and the eta. Also, there are 2 O's, omicron, which looks like an English O, and omega, which in the small letter looks like a W with rounded bottoms. If you look on the list there, you'll see. So when it says in the New Testament that Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega, and then it says the beginning and the end, it would be like saying in English, he's the A to the Z, the beginning and the end. Now, there are a few letters, when you get through some of this, that don't look anything like an English letter. And there's two that start with a P down in the last set, Phi and Psi. And they don't look anything like an English letter. Phi, Phi, P-H-I, is like a circle with a vertical line through it. But Psi, P-S-I, looks like a pitchfork. And it's the only thing that looks like a pitchfork. If you see a pitchfork in a small letter, that's a P-S-I. And you say, isn't that strange? And yet we have psychology. It starts with a P. We have physics. It starts with a P. So that's come over from the Greek. Letters that have a sound, probably more like the middle letter of the name of the letter, like P-S-I, but they have a P in the front. Pneuma, which starts with a P, where we get pneumonia and pneumatic, and that means spirit. It starts with a PS. So look down, draw you a line. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, line. Epsilon, zeta, eta, theta. Draw a line. Iota, kappa, lambda, mu, or mu. Draw a line. Nu, chi, omicron, pi. Now pi we usually know, pi r square. Of course that sounds sort of dumb because everybody knows pi are round. That's a joke. But the letter pi just looks like a little stool. And then the next set, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, and then phi, chi, psi, and omega. It's not hard to learn it. Now you can use the resource I have where the Moon's Reverse Interlinear Bible will give you the English translation with the Greek word spelled in English letters under it. You can use that. You're not really learning the Greek alphabet, but you can use that, and that'll help you learn the Greek alphabet. So this is the way to attack the Greek alphabet. Only 24 little letters. There's a few other peculiarities that might want to be noted among some of those that I read out. One of them is that the N, the small n, looks like a V, exactly like a small V. It's recognizable, but you wouldn't guess that that was an N. Another one, sigma, which looks pretty much like RS if you use the one used at the end of a sentence, but it looks like it's a curlicue if if the letter is used in the middle of a word, pardon me. And so that's still the same letter, it's just used differently. In the middle of a word, it'll look like a curlicue. At the end of the word, it'll look like an S with like the bottom sort of falling out of it. But it is possible to learn these letters. And we'll do that in the first class. We'll go over this in the first class that we have for the beginning Greek. And I call that the beginning Greek. And then for the more advanced class that we have here, we will probably do on one-on-one rather than in a class, unless there's enough that want to form a class. And if you want to do that one-on-one, it's best to buy Payne's Beginning Greek book. But you don't need anything but online available resources to do a beginning Greek where you can actually look up a Greek word in the New Testament, get all the meanings for it, and get told how the word is used, like is it a subject or an object or whatever. Nouns and verbs will be what you're concentrating on. And it's not hard to do a word study. Most people who have had extensive Greek in college and seminary, 30 years later, some of you probably can't imagine that, but that's not hard for me, they will be just doing word studies. But after all, isn't that mostly about what Greek study is about? What does that word really mean? And how is it related to words that are actually in our English language? Many English words have their root in the Greek. So look at it as fun. And thank you for your attention, and have a great day.